Before you can build a house of glass, you have to write the lie that justifies the foundation. The entire architecture of the Western world was born from a staged accident. On Christmas Day, a Frankish king named Charlemagne knelt to pray and rose as a Roman emperor. Long before Abbot Suger weaponized atmospheric light north of Paris, the Western Church executed a different kind of structural transformation. This wasn't an accidental blessing from a grateful pope. It was a calculated legal and geopolitical operation. In 800 AD, the Roman Empire was dead, but its ghost still held absolute psychological authority over the continent. To rule, Charlemagne needed the title of emperor. But to grant that title, the pope needed a permanent legal mechanism. They didn't just crown a warlord, they established the legal codebase that made the illusion of divine right possible. They brought out a portable folding chair whose oldest base dated to the 7th century, an itinerant symbol of Roman administrative rule. If your power lacks physical legitimacy, you don't rewrite the laws, you manufacture the history from the ground up. If a coronation is spontaneous, it leaves a chaotic footprint. But when you audit the physical spacing of Rome on Christmas Day, the chaos disappears. To pull off the illusion of an unplanned miracle, every player had to be forewarned and perfectly positioned. The ritual required the immediate chanting of the Laudes Regiae, imperial acclamations reserved for Roman imperial ceremony. These complex, highly stylized legal formulas weren't improvised on the steps by a surprised congregation. They required weeks of deliberate rehearsal, synchronized timing, and explicit papal authorization. And at the center of this rehearsed stage sat the physical prop, the portable curl chair of the Merovingian kings. They took an itinerant symbol of moving administrative power and forced it to stand perfectly still. The liturgy and the object were being welded together to create the appearance of ancient, unbroken permanence. This is how you manufacture history. You stage the event so perfectly that the choreography itself becomes the proof.
A perfectly staged coronation can secure a title, but it cannot sustain an empire without a permanent legal anchor.
To solidify their new geopolitical architecture, the papacy relied on the most devastating forgery in human history. The document claimed to be a direct decree from the Emperor Constantine himself, written in the 4th century. According to this text, Constantine had legally transferred supreme authority over Rome, Italy, and the entire Western Empire to the Pope. But when you audit the vocabulary of the text under a forensic lens, the entire thousand-year illusion collapses. The document uses the word satrapas to describe Roman officials, a linguistic term entirely absent from 4th century imperial administration. It was an 8th century administrative word, penned by a cleric of the Lateran who forgot that languages have a timeline.
The same institutional logic that manufactured a legal precedent on paper would later build a house of light in stone.
For 700 years, this single misspelled word determined the fate of kings, borders, and entire civilizations. If your power lacks a true lineage, you don't adjust your claims, you engineer the history from the ink up.
Once the legal forgery is embedded into the culture,
the state must construct a physical environment to protect it. In the 12th century, Abbot Suger didn't just redesign an abbey, he created a sensory apparatus for power. This is the exact era when the Carolingian bronze additions were permanently attached, converting a low folding seat into a rigid, towering throne. Suger built a literal cage of glass and shifting light around this patchwork artifact to alter how it was perceived. His Lux Nova, the new theological light, was designed to overwhelm the senses. It was a calculated atmospheric distraction. You were never meant to forensically examine the mismatched bronze eras. You were meant to be blinded by the environment housing it. But wrapping a flexible object in a rigid frame creates a severe mechanical contradiction. By restricting the ancient seat's ability to fold and flex, the structural additions forced centuries of physical stress into a single internal point. 600 years later, Napoleon Bonaparte pulled this exact chair out of its protective cage for a massive military rally. He sat on it, and legend holds the ancient throne broke under his weight. Because a cage of light can easily deceive the human eye, but it can never cheat the absolute laws of physics.
Charlemagne utilized a fabricated text.
Abbot Suger constructed a cage of light to house it. Napoleon violently clamped it together. But when you build a 1,000-year empire on a structural contradiction, the accumulative strain always targets the weakest joint. The physical reality of the artifact confirms the lore. The heavy bronze reinforcement brackets added after the Boulogne incident tell the true story. The rigid imperial additions refused to give. The ancient mobile base could no longer flex. The throne was systematically choked by its own propaganda. It was an itinerant military stool, trapped in a church cage, and broken by a desperate dictator. For a millennium, the state manufactured the illusion of an unbroken divine right, completely dependent on the physical permanence of a chair. But power does not care about archaeological integrity. It does not care about the truth of the ink or the stability of the metal. It only cares about the performance, the choreography, the atmosphere. The Throne of Dagobert was never an ancient monument of unbroken power. It was an ongoing damage control operation, because power doesn't care about the truth. It only cares about the paint.